Okay, G. Complex number, lecture number 4. We ended our lecture 3 on the Argand diagram, where we made sure that we work upon the angle and the modulus. That means the R and the theta. So we got to know that in the first quadrant, the angle itself is alpha, right? But on the other hand, if you see that you have Z2 as negative under root 2 plus iota. So what does that mean? That clearly indicates that if I want to find out Z modulus, so this particularly will mean that we need to work upon the values. So this should be under root 3 whole square. Even if I take negative, negative, negative will become positive. Similarly, we'll have what 1 square. So Z modulus will be under root 4, which means it should be what? 2. Whereas tan inverse should be 1 upon under root 3. 1 upon under root 3 is pi upon 6. 1 upon under root 3 is pi upon 6. Now, we actually know that this is your negative quadrant. This is your negative quadrant. And 10 negatively comes in the second quadrant. 10 negative comes in the second quadrant where we have pi minus alpha. So this is pi upon 6. So if I need to have this angle, so what we need to do is theta is equal to pi minus pi upon 6, which means the theta will be 5 upon 6 pi. And theta is basically called as argument of what? Z. Now, considering the same concept that if I want to have the answer in the trigonometric form, so this should be, since your R is 2, right? Then we have cos 5 upon 6 pi plus iota sine pi upon 6 pi. And this is your trigonometric form. Similarly, there can be what? Your polar form and the exponential form as well. Your polar form will be normally known as what? Z 2 less than 5 upon 6 pi. And your exponential form will be Z is equal to 2 or exponential iota 5 upon 6 pi. So these are the three forms which we need to give our answer. But remember, your answer will be based upon the second quadrant. Since it is based upon the second quadrant, we actually know that your second quadrant has what? Your second quadrant will show pi upon 6 or pi minus alpha. So we knew that tan inverse, and tan inverse we had the value of what? Tan inverse we had value of 1 upon under root 3. So the answer was what? Pi upon 6. But since it was negative, so we are taking down the second quadrant. So second quadrant will always be pi minus alpha. So pi minus pi upon 6 will be 5 upon 6 pi. So the theta is pi upon 6 pi for this particular question that we just attempted for what? Z 2 minus under root 3 plus iota. Now covering down this thing for Z3, and the Z3 was given as such that it was now, since we know that Z3 is minus 1 minus under root 3 iota, so we will be taking out the modulus of this minus 1 square plus minus under root 3 square under root. So this should be again under root 4, which is equal to what? 2. Now, you need to understand that tan inverse is imaginary value. Imaginary value is under root 3. Imaginary value is under root 3 upon 1. So this will give me what? Theta. The theta that we have is Theta that we have is pi upon 3. Theta that we have is pi upon 3. But we know this, that this thing is in the third quadrant, negative, negative. So if this is pi upon 3, so the point is that for the third quadrant, we use negative pi minus alpha. So what we can do is negative pi minus pi upon 3. So 3 pi minus 2, which means it should be normally minus 2 upon 3 pi. So this becomes your theta. Now, if I just want to put down the values such that trigonometry ratio will be 2 cos 2 upon 3 pi, 2 cos 2 upon 3 pi, but since this is negative, we write down negative plus iota sine minus 2 upon 3 pi. So this becomes your trigonometric ratio. Then we have polar ratio as what? 2 less than minus 2 upon 3 pi. And then we also have the exponential ratio, which is 2 e to the power iota 2 upon 3 pi. But obviously this is in negative. So we'll write down this thing in bracket. So for the third part, we can directly see that since it is accompanied in the third quadrant, so using the third quadrant formula, negative pi minus alpha, we are using the value to find out theta. Then lastly, what do we have? We have Z4, and Z4 is 3 minus 3 iota. What does Z4 mean? Z4 means that we need to understand that this is your Argand diagram, Z4 is somewhere here. And this is basically minus alpha in the end. Whatever the angle that you are getting, this will be minus alpha. But for right now, we need to find out the modulus. So this should be 3 square plus negative 3 square. So this should be under root what? 18. Under root 18 is 3 under root 2. Under root 18 is 3 under root 2. So R becomes 3 under root 2. Whereas theta will become tan inverse theta or the alpha that we are calculating. So this should be 3 upon 3, which is what? Theta is equal to tan inverse 1. Now, normally in the degree form, tan inverse 1 is 45. So here in this form, this is pi upon 4. But since this is in the fourth quadrant, and in the fourth quadrant, this is alpha is in negative. So that means theta will be negative pi upon 4. So when I want to write it in the trigonometric form, we look into what? 3 under root 2 cos negative pi upon 4 plus iota sine negative pi upon 4. This becomes your trigonometric form, whereas 3 under root 2, we have less than, then directly we can write down what? Pi, negative pi upon 4. And then we also have 3 under root 2 exponential iota negative pi upon 4. So we already know that we have 3 different options to write down the angles. We have 3 different options to write down the angles. But remember this, that wherever the complex number is there in the x-axis, we'll be looking forward for that. For suppose that in the first part it was 2 plus 2 iota. So the answer was alpha. In the second part, this was minus under root 3 plus iota. So here we had pi minus alpha. Since both were negative, this becomes the third quadrant. This becomes minus pi, obviously minus bracket open pi minus alpha. And here we'll be treating normally root as what? Negative alpha. But that will depend upon the complex number where it lies in the fourth quadrant. Whether it is lying here in the first quadrant, whether it is lying in the second quadrant, whether it is lying in the third quadrant, or whether it is lying in the fourth quadrant. In the first quadrant, it is pi. In here, it is pi minus alpha. Here, it becomes minus pi minus alpha. And here, it becomes what? Minus alpha. So, these are the particular values which we can use to calculate the angles for the complex number. Okay, Ji, moving further now, let's just work upon trigonometry to the Cartesian form. So if we just see that 2 under root 2 multiplied by cos pi upon 4 and plus 2 under root 2 multiplied by iota sine pi upon 4. So if you just see that 2 under root 2 multiplied by pi upon 4, this will be normally considered what? This will be 2. Whereas if you see that we have 2 under root 2 iota sine pi upon 4, so this will be considered as what? 2 iota. So solving this, that means 2 under root 2 multiplied by cos pi upon 4 will give me what? 2 plus 2 iota overall. Because cos pi upon 4, if we just multiply this, cos pi upon 4 is 1 upon under root 2 plus there should be 2 under root 2 iota sine pi upon 4 is 1 upon under root 2 as well. So that means under root cancel here, under root cancel. So you are left with what? 2 plus 2 iota. Then let's just work upon Z2. Z2 answer was 2. Z2 answer was 2. Z2 answer was 2 cos pi upon 6 pi plus iota sine pi upon 6 pi. Right? So this should be Z2 is 2 multiplied by cos pi upon 6 pi plus 2 iota sine pi upon 6 pi. Considering that pi upon 6 is negative under root 3 upon 2 plus iota pi upon 6 will be what? 1 upon 2. So in the end, what we'll have is multiplied by 2 as well. So what we'll have is under root negative under root 3 plus iota. So same way, if it is multiplied by Z3 as well, so 2 cos negative 2 upon 3 pi plus iota sine, let's say negative 2 upon 3 pi. So the answer for this should be, which is 2 negative 2 upon negative cos negative 2 upon 3 pi is negative 1 upon 2 pi plus iota sine negative 2 upon 3 is negative under root 3 upon 2. So solving this, we will end up having what? Z3, which will be negative 1 negative under root 3 iota. So in this way, what you can do is you can always change your trigonometry to Cartesian form.